What's up, guys? Chris Schwartz-Edmisten here from Schwartz-Edmisten Web Design. If you're not familiar with who I am, I specialize in customizing Squarespace with CSS. And in today's video, I want to show you exactly how I organize all of the custom CSS on my site. And first, I want to go over the site-wide custom CSS window and how I organize my CSS inside of it. So first, I always start with the color variable CSS at the top. And these are all the color variables that I'm going to be using throughout the site. So I like to keep these at the top, and here I'm just pulling in colors from the site-wide color palette. And then here I have some just hex codes defined as well. But the handy thing about keeping them in a variable is if I wanted to change my brand colors in the future, I can just update them in one place and it'll update anywhere that I've used that variable throughout the site. So color variables always go at the top. And then I like to have my typography CSS. Any header CSS, so this is any CSS customizing the header of the site, not heading CSS, which would customize, the different heading sizes. That would go under typography CSS. Then I have global component CSS. And what I mean by that is the way that I write my CSS is site-wide. So I like to create styles for different components, and then I will just use that element throughout the site, and the CSS that I've written for that component will automatically apply. So for example, let's go past the heading. So now I'm in my sort of like component CSS. So here we have my button styling. So a lot of beginners will style elements using the block ID. So for example, they want to change a button on their site, they'll target the button, they'll write their styles, and then if they want to target another button, they'll target that button ID, block ID, and then they'll write styles for that. And it's very like element specific customization, which is not a good way to do it. So the way that you want to write CSS is to target elements globally. And that way, anytime you use that element, it's automatically going to inherit those, component styles that you've written. So here, for example, I'm targeting the tertiary button on my site. And I'm just making some changes to it. And this is something that will apply to all tertiary buttons across the site. So I do the same thing for, I have some embed block CSS, some auto layout CSS, newsletter block styling. So this is component-wide CSS. And then after my global component CSS, I'll have any page-specific CSS in the custom CSS window. But I only do this if I have to. So if your site is on the lowest plan, then you don't have access to the page header code injection, so you can't write page-specific CSS. You have to put it in your site-wide custom CSS window. So if I can avoid that, then I do. But if the site is on the lowest plan, then I will put page-specific CSS in the custom CSS window. And the order that I would write that in is basically just the order of the navigation. So I would do the home page customization, then the about page, then services, then tutorials, just generally follow the navigation structure, and that sort of keeps all of the pages organized in your site-wide custom CSS window. But I don't like to do that. If I'm going to be styling elements on a specific page, I don't like to clutter my site-wide custom CSS window with that page-specific CSS. For one, it's just sort of a separation of page concerns. I only want global things in my global CSS window, and then page-specific things should really live in that page. Because if that page is deleted, the chances of you remembering to go in and delete any CSS associated with that page is pretty low. And so over time, you'll just accumulate a lot of old CSS that doesn't apply anymore, and it's very easy to have your custom CSS window get really out of hand. So if you have the ability to put page-specific CSS in the page header code injection, then do that. That way, when you delete the page, the CSS gets deleted with it. So after any page-specific CSS, I'll then have any CSS targeting the footer, and then I always keep my plugin CSS at the bottom. So because I use this structure for every site that I write CSS on, it's very easy for me to come back, even months in the future and know exactly where roughly I should be looking for things. So I'm not spending time sort of combing through my CSS, like, what did this do again? Where do I find this? Because it follows a layout that I use on every single site, it's very easy for me to find CSS. And I also use a comment system. So commenting is super important because if you just write CSS and then come back a month later, you will have no idea what that CSS is targeting, especially if you're kind of doing it the bad way of only using block IDs. You're just going to have a bunch of block IDs in CSS and you have no idea on what page or what element or what the heck the CSS is actually doing. So it's really important for you to write comments. And this is the comment system that I use. So basically for my sort of main section headings here, I'll use this style where we have like this multi-line comment format. And then I'll do a bunch of equal signs on top and on bottom. And then I'll have sort of like the, what it does styling next. So you can see that here. This is the embed block. This is the auto layout section. I have sort of like the main overarching heading describing what the styling is for. And then this is sort of, I don't stick to this exactly, but I would then use the multi-line comment as a secondary heading. And by multi-line comment, this just means like you can do something like this. And like this is a multiple lines of a comment, and this is valid. Something like this would not be valid because this is a single line comment. So basically this would be commented out, but this part would not be commented out. If you want to do a multi-line comment, then you would need to use this format. This is a single line comment. So I sort of use this multi-line comment as like a secondary heading type. So for example, I could say, this is going to be my button styles. And then I could say, this is my primary button. And then this would be like primary button hover styles. So by using this structure, we have like sort of 3 different levels of hierarchy that we can use. But often I don't need that second level and I just go straight to single line comments. And you can see that in my custom CSS a lot. So I just went straight to, single line comments here. These are all single line comments. So I'm just sort of pointing out that, sometimes I use this structure, but it's not a hard and fast rule. But I always have this main heading, and then usually I'll just go to this, but sometimes I'll also use this. So you might be wondering, like, what's the difference between like, why use one or the other? And it's important to note that basically single line commenting is not valid CSS. So because Squarespace's site-wide custom CSS window uses the less preprocessor, we can use a single line comment like this, but it's actually just like, it's not valid in CSS. It's really only for JavaScript, like inside of a script tag. So if you're going to be writing CSS in the page-specific code injection, we have some different comment styles that you'll be using. So we have like a main sort of HTML comment. And if I go to say, I have some code on the blog page. So I'll go to advanced and then page header code injection. So here you can see that I have a multi-line comment here for the style because again, single line comments are broken. So this is invalid. This will break your code. You cannot use single line comments inside of a style tag in the page header code injection. So CSS inside of the page header code injection needs to be within a style tag, and then JavaScript will be within a script tag. So you'll have to use the multi-line comment for your CSS and style tags in the page header code injection. And I don't use this formatting in the page header code injection just because this takes up a lot of room. So that's fine in the site-wide custom CSS window, which is a really big code field. But here it just feels like it doesn't feel as helpful in this code field as it does in the site-wide custom CSS window. So I really only just use the multi-line comments. And then single line comments will only work within script tags. So that's, a normal JavaScript sort of syntax. So here's a single line comment, and you can see it's working because it's within a script tag for this JavaScript. And then of course you can also use multi-line comments in JavaScript as well. And that just allows you to do something like this. You can see it's a multi-line comment and it still works. Whereas if I did something like this, now this is no longer part of the comment because it's not part of that singular line anymore. So that would break. Okay, so hopefully that illustrates single and multi-line comments. So in JavaScript, you can use both. In the page header code injection for CSS within style tags, you can only use the multi-line comments. And then, so you might be wondering, so what's this? So this is like an HTML comment. So it's going to be opening bracket, exclamation point, dash dash, and then your comment, and then you finish it off with another dash dash, and then closing bracket. And this is also a good way to sort of like wrap multiple things. So I can say like, this is my, I don't know, blog date code. There we go. And then I'll finish it off. And this can also be multi-line. So if I wanted to like comment out all of the code in my header, I can come down below and paste that down here. And now because it's within the closing sort of, brackets of this comment, this whole thing is commented out. So I'll use this a lot for, if I want to like test before and after the code being applied and the code not being applied, these HTML comments are super helpful. And you can see that, this HTML has to be outside of the style bracket. So it would not work inside of here. It's going to think that you're trying to write CSS inside of the style tag. So this has to be outside of the style or script tag. And this will show up in the HTML. So if I hit save, I'm on the wrong page. So if I go to the blog page and then inspect the page, we can go to the document's head because it's the page head code injection. So it injects it into the head of the document. And if we scroll down, we can see that blog date code comment. So you can see this type of a comment is good because you can sort of organize different types of snippets that come after it. So like if my blog date code had a style tag and a code tag, I could organize those snippets within this sort of thing. So you can see, my Peaches is my affiliate program that I use. And so this script tag I can see is, related to that. And then within the style tag, you can still see all of the individual comments that we had as well. So hopefully that sort of illustrates, how to organize the comments within the page specific code injection. So this is going to organize, multiple style and script tags. This is good for multi-line comments within a style or script tag, and then single line comments only work within script tags. It won't work within the style tags. So it's really important to, just follow this structure for your code organization and write really descriptive comments about the changes that you're making. And that way, you can come back to your code that you've written months later and you know exactly where to find things and exactly what the changes that you were making are. So I hope you found this helpful. If you did, let me know in the comments below and consider subscribing to the channel for more Squarespace customization content like this. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one.